So I don't really see a purpose for homebrewing anymore. There's so many books out there. Why spend the time doing it when you could just go buy a book or hop online and Google? Let's try that again. Homebrewing can be a lot of fun. The problem is when we homebrew things, we tend to break our games. We make a monster that's too big, a magic item that's too powerful, or a spell that just breaks things down. But there's some common rules that we can follow when we're homebrewing to actually help us be able to balance our own games. This is not about balancing outside of your table. This is to make sure that your game doesn't break and it overwhelm you as a dungeon master. Because remember, we are the dungeon masters. We can make things as we see fit, so truly balancing is a myth and a legend, but this is something to keep in mind to make our jobs easier as a dungeon master. So let's get right on into this. The first step to balancing your homebrew is to start small. And I don't mean start with a small monster. You can start with a giant monster, and then take that monster and slowly tweak it, changing little bitty properties. Start with a pre-done stat block and retheme it with something else. These small changes is enough to make it so you don't have to create entire swaths of things that are brand new. Instead, you can do things that are much smaller, allowing you for a simpler time as a dungeon master. As you become more comfortable homebrewing, go larger, go bigger, or go home. But the bottom line is sometimes taking something that's already done, retheming it slightly, is the perfect homebrew for your table. And exactly what you need as a dungeon master to keep things original, but not break the game. The next thing to understand when homebrewing is the power curve. What the hell is the power curve? In Dungeons & Dragons, it's a tier-based system. 1 through 4, 5 through 8, 9, then 10 through really 14, 15, and then 16 on. It's the tier-based system. Now, depending on who you talk to, depends on where you say those tier curves kick in, and different parties kick in different places, and same with the different levels of the characters. The bottom line is the power curve in Dungeons & Dragons is not linear. As characters gain power, that curve arches up. So a +1 sword in the end game is not going to make nearly the impact as a +4 sword that does damage. If you want the item to make a difference, you have to understand where the players are on that power curve. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying the item has to be good beginning game and end game, which the leveling items do have to have a power curve that's more parabolic than linear. So you have to keep that in mind. The power curve is just the idea as the higher the level the players get, they become exponentially more powerful. So you have to just keep that in mind when balancing the items. Is this item developed for level 1 or to scale throughout the game? That's the power curve. The third thing you want to do before you throw a magic item in the game is play test it. As a dungeon master, take your players' characters, give them the magic item, and roll some combat. See how they would do with it. Be creative. How would you break the game? And understand that no matter what you come up with, your players are going to ruin everything with a magic item because they're going to think outside the box. You as the dungeon master have to play test it in your mind, run it through, consider all of the options and things, and then be ready to make adjustments, which will be the next step. But in turn, play test it. Think of all the ways they could break it. Or give it out to the public. Let the public play test it. How would you use this item to break it? Such as the bag of holding and the portable hole. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check, because I never give my party both. In fact, bag of holdings and portable holes are some of the most rarest items in my games. They may be uncommon or rare in yours, but not in mine. And you'll find out when you can have a nuclear bomb in your pocket. The fourth thing to consider when homebrewing is the rule of cool. Sometimes magic items are cool. Sometimes just doing something fun is cool. The rule of cool can set magic items aside by allowing it to do something that may be just not purely mechanical. The rule of cool can be the background, the backstory, where the item came from, what it's capable of doing in specific circumstances. And then sometimes it just does something off-hinged. A lot of times my homebrew magic items will have a purpose, which I talk about in one of my previous videos of when an item has a purpose, what was the reason it was created? When that scenario happens again, the rule of cool wins. If an item was created specifically to kill vampires, when the players go up against a vampire, it's not just doing +1 or +2. That thing is going to mow them down. I'm going to make it amazing. Maybe one hit kills, maybe Vorpal, maybe +10, I don't know. But when the purpose overrules the rule of cool, sometimes that takes it a step further. The problem is the rule of cool can get you in a lot of trouble, but you still got to consider it. The fifth thing when it comes to balancing your own homebrew and your own campaigns, when the players just decide to completely break everything you've got, adjust. Be ready to balance and adjust. Understand that when you introduce an item, if your players are ruining the game for you, talk outside of the players, talk outside of the game, talk outside of the context of the characters and say, guys, I know I gave you this item. It's making it really hard for me to adjust encounters because I did not expect you to use it that way. Either one, you have to stop using it that way, or we need to adjust its power so it can't be done. There's nothing wrong with that. You can have out-of-game conversations about in-game mechanics, and so that way you and your players can all have an amazing experience. Be ready to back off when you homebrew, especially if you didn't playtest it. I know that was we said playtest, but sometimes we don't have the time. And we want to get something in there as we want to see fit because we want to make it cool and we want to give our players something amazing. So if we do that, just be ready to adjust and just be ready to have those conversations. So there's some 5 tips to balancing homebrew in your own campaigns. And in the end, it doesn't really matter as long as you are having fun. And your table is what matters the most. These are just 5 things that when I create items, creatures, anything that's out there, I make sure that I give them some thought because I want my game to be balanced, I want it to be fun, and I want to give myself a little less work to do. So like, subscribe, we'll see you next time, and again, thanks for joining us.